Hello and welcome back to the Undercut podcast. It's time to review the ninth race of the year, the British Grand Prix. I'm your host, Jesse Billington, and joining me once again is none other than Mr. Thiemo Albers Daly. How are you?
Doing quite well, and you sounding not quite as bad as Harry Kane, but you do have the sound of someone who's been shouting a lot over the course of the weekend.
Yes, a lot of cheering on from trackside, and then also the campsite did have the football on the big screen as well, which really sort of added to the sort of hurdle
Because
my
it didn't
voice
have enough of a festival atmosphere as it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. I mean, the campsite was absolutely bouncing throughout the weekend, especially because we got there, checked in Wednesday night. So there was obviously the first of the England matches on them. We had sort of
Mm.
Wimbledon pretty solidly on, and then as soon as the football was start, the telly got switched over to the football. Obviously, three incredible days of racing at Silverstone, and then on Sunday night there was the football. I did not stay up to watch the second match. I will hold my hands up to that because I did have to drive home,
Poor form.
all the unpacking. My girlfriend woke up at about sort of like 2:30 at night and wandered back into the middle of the campsite to watch the second half. And apparently
That's commitment right there.
that
That's
is
proper
commitment to the
commitment.
bit. Congratulations, Georgia. Apparently the atmosphere was pretty solid. So yeah, all things considered, very good and a very hot and sunny weekend at Silverstone.
Mm.
I think half my voice is gone just because of the amount of dust that is currently sort of lining my lungs, like some sort of Victorian coal mining child. But there we go. We're soldiering on through it to bring you the good podcast, and there is a lot to talk about. We were saying as just before we hit record, there is somehow a lot and not a lot to talk about, depending on what your subjects and topics are. So we'll just start off with some very positive news, and I've subtitled this one. Let's talk about Ciarra Bättig, because this was the wild card for the F1 Academy this weekend. She couldn't enter the series earlier this year because she was underage. She was too young. Her birthday wasn't until mid-March, so she wasn't actually able to take part in the Chinese round or the Canadian round. I think she was still sort of focusing on her GB4, no, her British Formula 4 championship. However, British Grand Prix rolls around. She is now of age. She now has a weekend free, and yeah, she joined as a wild
It
card.
was a blinder.
Yeah, she's seen success already in a number of other series and has Red Bull backing. She rocked up at Silverstone, laid down a lap for pole, scored points in the reverse grid race, and then keeps her nose clean in the feature race, chasing home a dominant Alicia Pomorski. Didn't put her foot down, didn't put her foot wrong rather, and in the process, nearly doubles High-Tech's points haul so far this season. Slots into the championship order in 11th, and she's currently 13th in British Formula 4, 3 points finishes to her name, one of them being in third place on the podium there as well, with a lot of that season still to go. So it's a phenomenal sort of run, and I think obviously this will
It's the
be
most impressive wild card, I think, since possibly Gaidman in
yeah.
when she was in her Dutch round. I think there was someone else since then. I'm struggling with the names now, but
Was it
it's
Polanski?
sort of no, I don't think so. I think it was another Dutch driver, and I'm just completely blanking on the name. But I've seen it as Zandvoort. You don't see it as prominent on the other places. You see, like Canada last year, you had bad luck for the driver there. China, they had Shiwei. She just didn't have any luck both times she was there. And but then when they do well, they do well. She topped the practice session as well. She's also competing in Italian F4, so she's getting lots and lots of experience. And if she was in any way worried about maybe getting a seat in F1 Academy next year, I think she might be all right, considering what else do you want from a wildcard driver than to come in and just be on it immediately. We gave Natalia Granado big props when she came in China because she was the last addition to the grid permanently for this year. And she came in, got a podium straight off the bat. Um, but she had the rest of the season if it didn't go to plan. Ciara doesn't, and she didn't waste any time. And it was just this is why we love racing, right? It's this sort of story where you just come in, obliterate the competition for the most part, and it's worrying when you're the full-time drivers. I mean, it's mad to think that she gets podium before Alba Larson,
Yeah.
who is the big poster person for the sport the series at the moment. That's just mad when you think about it. But again, brilliant for the series in that respect, showing this is what happens when you give the opportunity to someone who has the potential and is deserving of it.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, it's just one of those things that makes you love racing. It's the story that comes with it, the driver that just comes in, shows exactly what they're capable of doing, and just sort of can walk away holding their head as high as anything, and rightly so. And I look forward to when she joins F1 Academy next season because it's almost a
He's
surefire.
got to.
Especially because this is Pomorski's second season, isn't it? I'm right in saying,
Yeah, it's a lot of second seasons. It's
which
one of the
means
good things about the series is that
yeah.
you always get a high turnover at least once every couple of years. So you've got what more does she have to do to be deserving of a spot there?
But also, what it means is that Red Bull backed seat will be vacated,
Yeah,
and Ciarra
yeah.
already has the Red Bull backing. So they will almost certainly go, "Well, go on then." And I think we'll see
Yeah.
her do one season in F1 Academy, and I think there is good reason we'll only see her do one series in an F1 Academy, is because once you've won it, you can't do it again. And
Hmm.
I look forward to seeing that season come through. We'll talk more about F1 Academy at a different point in time. We'll move on to the more important issues surrounding this Grand Prix and what happened with that safety car. Obviously, we had the late safety car. Max Verstappen suffers some major issues. I think essentially the rear wing doesn't sort of reattach itself to the airflow properly, which
Doesn't
caused the
do its
car to go
job.
very wobbly. Essentially, when it comes out of its like sort of Macarena move, it's not properly catching the air and
It still
settling.
wants to party.
Yeah, and we saw this happen to the car at the Red Bull Ring, which is
Melbourne.
off in qualifying. And importantly, the FIA is now saying it's going to be investigating the safety of these rotating type wings because obviously it's now caused two significant crashes for Max Verstappen. And you've got
But
to
yeah,
feel
it's interesting you're investigating the wing. It's like, on one hand, fair, but also maybe just the one wing, because the other ones seem to be doing all right.
Hadjar seems to be able to cope with it perfectly fine.
Hmm.
Potentially his approach
And
into
other
racing.
teams with their rotating wings,
Yeah,
we're not seeing any issues. It's just that one.
ironic that in a weekend where Christian Horner was back on the grid as just as a fan.
There were a lot of
Yeah,
amusing comments about that. I was like, huh,
yeah.
we're not
But
saying anything.
ironic that in a weekend where Christian Horner is back, we're back to the old adage of just change your fucking car. If you can't make that wing style work, don't keep using it. If it keeps putting your
Hmm.
four-time world champion in the kitty litter, don't use it. Anyway, that aside, it brought out the safety car, and an important thing that I think everyone sort of forgot, including seemingly at one point the computer system that runs the lights and the strips on the screen, forgot that essentially you need a lap after releasing the lapped cars to be completed to prevent faster cars, or the faster part of the pack rather, from ploughing into the back of them. The software, I think the GUI bit that
They,
presses the buttons, soft, glitched and forgot to add that last lap, briefly showing the safety car in this lap, giving us the false hope that there was going to be one final lap of racing. And I can tell you the boos were enormous.
oh, I'm not surprised.
And it's annoying, and it begs the question whether there's a better way to do safety cars in the closing stages or how to remove
Yes.
lapped cars from the field. Many have suggested IndyCar's method of lapped cars pull in through the pits to get out of the order and then simply file back in at the back of the field. That way, you can do it within the space of one lap. It's very easy, very
Mm.
straightforward. Alternatively, you could just have a blanket rule that in the final X kilometers of any Grand Prix to allow for a bit of circuit length variation, if there's an incident, it just goes to a red flag. In any other major sports, if there is a significant problem and a player needs to be removed from the pitch, you stop the clock. Why in Formula One, if there is a significant issue in the field of play, do we not stop the clock and
I
remove the
was thinking
problem?
even without that, do what Formula E does, added laps. There is the fuel argument with that, but again, you have the same potential issue with Formula E with the energy. You're not guaranteed to be able to do it, but it gives
Yeah,
that opportunity, and it sort of plays into the wider strategy of, oh, do I save a little bit more fuel? You see it in IndyCar, we've had drivers run out of fuel on the last lap before. There, so again, it's just a natural part of racing, and if you're not going to refuel, that's fine, but it adds that extra bit of strategic spice into it. So again, there's three perfectly good options right there, and all of them are better than what we currently have.
yeah. I mean, I think the sort of red flagging it, stopping it, starting it again, because what it does do is it puts everyone on a level playing field, assuming they've all got the tires to do it. There's still that jeopardy of, well, do you change your tires? Don't you change your
Yeah,
tires? And you've still got that jeopardy. You've still
you'd
got,
rather have that, and it
yeah,
goes a bit topsy turvy than what we got
yeah.
because no one enjoys that sort of racing.
you'd still have a natural element of sporting jeopardy and you'd still have some natural sporting laps in which to complete it. And it just allows for that fair pause in competition. And it's one of those things where obviously at the moment we're going through a huge amount of other sports events going on around the world. We've got the Tour de France going on, we've got the Football World Cup, got Wimbledon on down in London. Whenever something happens there, certainly in the football and the tennis, you stop, you wait, you fix the problem, and you go again.
Hmm. It's not
In
rocket
20,
science.
yeah, it's not hard. What is hard, seemingly, is fixing super clipping, which is still very much an issue. And if you were paying close attention to the Grand Prix this weekend, you'll have seen that there were very few onboard shots, as cars suffered from a lot of super clipping and charging issues, than especially through the usually flat out sections. If you look back at the previous generation of car, you were still foot buried in the firewall on your way up to Stowe, on your way into Copse, on your way through Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel. Now, however, it is not really flat out. The super clipping at a very power hungry circuit like Silverstone reared its ugly head, and F1 said, we cannot be showing the power traces, the speed curves on the Halo sort of data overlay because people will see that the car starts sort of waning back on its power before the driver comes off the throttle and before they get on the brake trace. And
And it kind of showed anyway without the need of any graphics because talking to some people afterwards, you go, yeah, it the sprint itself was one of the better sprints we've had, but again, because of the new regulations and because of all that element, and because it's a shortened race distance. But you get to the Grand Prix and you go, normally the British Grand Prix is one of the better ones of the year, regardless of the regulation, regardless of the year, regardless of the domination of the car. But I've got to say, the general consensus was that the what was it, the 75th anniversary or 70th anniversary race in 2020 and the 23 race where Verstappen was in his god tier moment, they're the only two that they're the two that it's getting compared to the most, which isn't great because those weren't particularly exciting Grand Prix, and it kind of showed, that first 40 or so laps, not much really happened in the grand scheme of it. We've got stuff to talk about, but it's more just from a weird like dedicated fans. You could quite fairly argue. So we're always going to have some to talk about. But it wasn't until Kimi started having some issues that stuff started happening. But that wasn't really to do with the racing.
yeah,
So the fact that we needed that jeopardy to spice it up shows you how the highlights package should really just be the opening lap and maybe the last 12 because that really wasn't much besides that. And it was just interesting that it came in this regulation, and we've been talking about which Grand Prix venues are going to be like that moving forwards, which ones are going to be a bit more exciting. And seeing that in Silverstone does now make me a little bit more concerned for Spa. Whereas
yes.
Hungary, I think we might get it back in the other direction again, which will be needed going into the summer break because you want people to miss the sport when it goes away for a few weeks. You don't want it to be, and this isn't the fault of Spa, it's the fault of the regulations. Because you don't want to be then going, oh, I don't mind if I don't see an F1 race for a month.
Yeah, and equally, when we come back to Zandvoort as well, a tight, technical, twisty circuit, we're
Mm.
not going to have those super clipping issues. People will be coming, going, "Oh, F1's back! Oh, a great race!"
And then
Monza,
Monza is going to be 50-50.
uh, yeah, where cars are sort of almost coasting into Curva Grande at the far end of it. But anyway, but it's just one of those things where you notice they were making overtakes or looking to make moves in different places where they weren't relying on super
Mm.
clipping or the super clipping wasn't coming in. So this was conveniently where I'd booked grandstand seats. So as you come out through sort of Abbey through Farm into Village and the Loop, you've already done a heavy braking zone going into Abbey. The car doesn't need to super clip, therefore going into the next corner. So if you are a driver that wants to make a send on the brakes, that's a place where you can see it. And you see a couple of cars looking
We
to
saw
the
plenty of
outside.
that.
Yeah, saw a couple of cars looking for the sort of either the inside of Village or looking for the inside of the loop, sort of thinking if I hang to the outside of here, I'll get the inside for the next one. And you did get a couple of those really interesting overtakes, and we saw certainly in the sprint, we saw Antonelli and Hamilton looking at some
Mm.
interesting places where they could try and overtake through there, and then or line it up early enough on that you would then get the toe, the slingshot, and the traditional style pass down the Wellington Straight. So it's really interesting that we're seeing it sort of change the way that drivers have to race at previously well-known circuits, but not necessarily still for the better. So there's a lot still to be uncovered there. But equally, we say with the sprint races, they're shorter, you don't run out of power, you still get that slightly more exciting idea. We're obviously seeing coming up changing the engine regulations is going to tip the power favor back towards ICE part elements, but also There are rumours that we're going to 9 or 10 sprint races per year. And I will admit, I was skeptical at first, but over the course of certainly this season and the last, I have grown to like them. The drivers really have started really engaging with them. And also what I like is it brings this added jeopardy of you've got one practice session to make it right. It's then straight into a qualifying session. Your car is then locked. You have to do a race. And then if you've learned enough from that race, you then change it again for the next qualifying session or don't. And then you race again. And certainly with drivers that need those three elements of practice to build up, having a sprint weekend throws a bit of a spanner into the works. And you look at how Kimi had been in the previous sprint weekends, where it's taken him that time to
Mm.
build up over the weekend. It sort of now separates the men from the boys. If you need 3 hour-long sessions to go around the track and figure out your car, great. But there are some drivers that can go out there and do it in an hour. Your Verstappens, your Antonellis, your Hamiltons, your Leclercs on a good weekend. Your Alonsos certainly could probably do car setup in an hour, but your Strolls can't.
Well, maybe not the current car, but yes.
Well, that, yeah, if you gave Alonso a half decent car, he might be able to. But it's one of those things of it throws a bit of sort of indecision into the weekend and can sometimes jumble and mess around with the order. But now also Antonelli has sort of figured out how he wants to set up his car pretty much every weekend. It's taken a bit of that pressure off of it. So we'll see where we go.
I'm still not a fan of them. I think we did get a better one here at Silverstone than we've had, but I think that's mainly because I can count the ones I've enjoyed still on one hand. Um, I still think if we're going to keep them, which it appears we're going to until leadership changes at the very least, which is going to be a while, um, I still don't see what's wrong with just doing what F2 and F3 do. It would make it so much more interesting. You talk about getting it right. It also then promotes the a slightly interesting format, either by reversing the top 10, the top 8, or just reversing the entire grid, which is quite frankly, that would be quite interesting, especially at the moment because you're guaranteed to have Cadillacs and Aston Martins on the front row and the potential traffic jam that could cause as everyone tries to swarm past them. If you want to get your overtaking numbers up, that's what you do for now, because until they sort themselves out, you're going to have so many. Um, I listen to what you say there, and I don't necessarily disagree with the added pressure and fun and calamity that can come of it, but it still feels just too haphazard and it doesn't add enough for me to it. And I still think you're there for the Grand Prix, you're not there for the sprint. And again, you have a perfectly good sprint format that you're not using. I just don't. It doesn't change as much as the sprint races do in the junior categories. You see race like in F2 in Austria, the sprint race there, you have a truly wild podium because normally they're nowhere near it. And it shows that even if you're not um, Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, where you're getting on it immediately in that 1 hour practice, if you can still go from P15 to P8, you're suddenly on the front row. You've got more of a chance, which is something that then makes it all more interesting. Whereas at the moment, we're still getting Lewis, Kimi, George at the front. You're not changing that part of it. So if we're going to keep them, tweak the format again, try something different. Because if you're doing it to promote more racing, then jumble the order in an organic way that's already been tried and tested in, well, actually F2, F3, and F1 Academy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I
that's
agree
all I've got
that
on that one.
I agree that reversed grids would make them even more exciting, but I think over the course of a whole weekend, there is a important part the sprint race plays, and it does encourage sort of this very sort of
Well, I think it would encourage drivers to make more of an effort as well, then, because if you're at the front, you're not going to be taking too much of a risk. Whereas if you're qualifying, you then have to push in qualifying because it matters for the Grand Prix and the sprint. So you kind of just have to do your damage limitation in the sprint or prove your worth in the sprint. If you are Mercedes, let's see how good that car is in the midfield, and then you get to the front. But then you still set yourself up for the Grand Prix. Whereas if you're Alpine, you're suddenly locking out the front row. Maybe that's quite interesting. And how do they fare in clean air at the front? Because we don't obviously see that.
yeah.
So yeah,
I think it needs just that one final sort of push to get the idea of sprints over the line full time in Formula One. But with
no, I
that,
don't know about full time. That's a bit bloody much. Calm down.
we'll give MBS his due when we get to that point. Anyway, with that out of the way, we'll dive into our team by team analysis and we'll kick off with Mercedes. George Russell qualifies fourth for the Grand Prix and goes on to finish second, while Kimi Antonelli qualifies on pole, but DNFs the race. And I think this was,
Well, qualifies down in kind of qualified, not qualified, but qualified as finishing in what was it, 15th or 16th, wasn't it? Rather than
uh,
DNFing.
yes, well, I don't know why I've written DNF for him then. I think I just must have got carried away with the amount of times he
You
kept
copied
visiting
and
the
pasted
pits.
from from somewhere else.
Kept visiting the pits with a constant series of breakdowns and
Might as
fake
well have
flaws.
DNF'd.
Let's see, where did he finish? Did he finish Silverstone 2026? He finished no, I want to show don't show me that. I want to see the results. Here we go. He finished, let's get this correct for the recording. 15th, yeah. Finished B15. But yeah, I think it was solid operation as a unit this weekend for Mercedes. Nothing was really left on the table outright performance-wise. Kimi's ability to get up to speed, as we've already mentioned, is dangerous now for anyone thinking of running a championship battle against him. At his previous sprint races, we mentioned it in the preview as well, it's taken him a beat to get on form over the weekend without those three practice
When you
sessions.
compare it to Miami, and the
Yeah,
change is drastic.
yeah, if you look at his sort of progression over the sprint weekends, it's really interesting. And this weekend, he was on it by the sprint race and looked like he was going to storm to a win on the Sunday. It was a strange failure that led to him stumbling down the order, losing control a lot, and falling into the same problem that Lance Stroll was having, which was an unresponsive car that washed wide and
Their
tracked him
problem.
into every movement. However, in different causes. Um, it was a failed inner wheel aero component that broke. Essentially, there's sort of like an inner liner that goes sort of essentially where you have the eyebrows over the car that drops down and then kicks in, does control in wash. Um, that failed either through gravel impact or from curb striking, essentially sort of really running the car quite ragged in a bid to try and chase down the front pack. And this hampered his steering input range, which meant that he simply couldn't turn the front wheels as far as he wanted to in some directions, as well as the fact that also was lost the ability to damp that corner of the car properly, so he started understeering a lot. However, when you consider how far out he stretched that opening stint on the medium tires, it was phenomenal work, and George was able to mirror that somewhat. And once they'd learned from rivals how the hard tire ran, they made their strategy. They're like, look, if we can extend the mediums while they feel good, we can then just use the best part of the hards for that final leg, and we should be all right. Especially with the lower fuel load, the hard remained a more competitive tire than many had found it originally, and it stayed in that prime window for longer. George looked up to speed by Sunday, but at points he looked significantly adrift of the main pack. He needs to look at how he's developing his pace and the car over a weekend if he wants to hunt down that top set. He keeps asking for more engine, but was shut down by Toto for this. And either the boss doesn't want him to have more power and upset the apple cart with Kimi's dominance, which is also proving Toto Wolff's distractors wrong, or simply George isn't fast enough in these current regulations. There's two sides to that.
Or
Interesting.
there's something that happens if you push the car over a certain limit on that front that they don't want to put more attention to that they haven't quite solved yet.
But he seems to be critically outstripped on pace by Kimi, which they seem to be happy leaving him
Which
to run.
again, I'm just thinking maybe it's a similar thing like we were saying earlier with Verstappen and Hadjar, problem for one car but not the other. But maybe it's a setup thing or it's just something that they haven't quite figured out what causes why it's only affecting one car and not the other. We don't know, but it's just again, I doubt it's Toto not wanting to upset the apple cart. So
But
then
yeah,
it means is George just slow? No, by definition, but there may be something lacking. Or is there something that they're just masking and they're just going, I know you keep asking, George, but we haven't solved it yet, so we can't give you that because it will open us up to more vulnerabilities potentially down the line and give us headlines that we don't need.
yeah. Interestingly, this is George's first time on the podium at Silverstone in Formula One as
Mm.
well, which was remarkable when you think about sort of how well he's run for the previous seasons.
Shows
Just
what kind of a career he's had as well with the luck front, with Williams and then switching to Mercedes, and somehow it's only this year that he gets there. It's
yeah,
kind of mind-boggling.
it's taken him.
Hulkenberg gets a podium at Silverstone before George
He
Russell
does,
does.
yeah. But yeah, it's a very interesting one. It's clearly a strong car, but not one without its issues. I think one of the other interesting bits is that Bono's handling of a panicked driver still leaves a little wanting. He's clearly used to very clear-headed drivers. You think back to how Lewis, while often a bit demanding, was never sort of panicked
It's
and
always clear.
flustered. And with Kimi with the car failing, the team was unable to decide whether they wanted to bring him in for pits, whether they want what they wanted to do. They obviously didn't want him to retire on track, and so on and so forth. And all the problems it just sort of kept compiling, and they never seemed to come to a clean answer of what to do. And I don't know if this is Bonner's communication, if this is a shortfall in Kimi's communication as well, because he's
Well, he
possibly
seemed determined to stay out regardless and not
yeah,
listen to the Bono at times. So it was kind of admirable from that. But again, you'd have thought after he was told about the 5 seconds, you're not going to be able to get that because, you keep going off anyway. So it's going to be minimum 5 seconds if you keep going. He kind of got lucky with the safety car in a way.
yeah,
Because, okay, yeah, he tumbles out the points in his 15th, but at least it was only 5 seconds. If it kept going, he could have been 10 easily by the end of it. And then
yeah,
I mean, it's still no points either way, but if it gets to the point where certain countback results will matter on that one. You don't want to have fumbled that so badly that this one result, you've got this one random 22nd place screws you over in a title battle because of how close the point situation is, which, again, at this point it was a great weekend for the team in that respect, for George and for us as neutrals, because now George is what, only one victory away, points wise, 25 points gap to Kimi, which when you look back at the 5 Grand Prix run that Kimi was having, you're going, "Ooh, that's going to be tricky to come back from." And we're not even at the summer break, and we're already sort of at the point that we'd be quite happy with going into the summer break. So with 2 more races, that's quite interesting to see how quickly that pendulum swung back in the other direction. But equally, then with Lewis being only 32 points back from Kimi, he's now very firmly still in this. And I know Charles is quite a bit further back, but he's not out of it in terms of, you look at Norris and he's not too many points back from Leclerc, but given that McLaren, they're not there unless they can turn things around massively in the second half. So you've got 4 drivers still very much in it across 2 teams, which neither car is perfect, but you've got to say it looks like the Mercedes has this, even with their vulnerabilities, they're still the stronger car, but you've got the team going against them with the stronger driver pairing, and that's quite an interesting battle to watch then going forward. So from that perspective, it was a really good weekend for the championship. But obviously, Antonelli would disagree with that. But I think it's just nice for us as fans to see. Okay, there is a lot more life left in this championship than perhaps we would have thought around Japan Monaco time.
yeah. And equally, if we look back to as far as short a distance back as last year, Lando won the opening race before Oscar stormed into what many thought was going to be an unassailable lead.
Yeah.
But he then just sort of chipped away with Lando coming back at him through the season.
And you've got this third driver, Lewis, in
Yeah.
this case, not Max, just going, why not? I'll give it a go while I'm here. Let's see what I can do. Imagine if he wins by 2 points now to counter Max's loss by 2 points. That would be quite a. I don't think I'll make that a prediction just yet, but that'd be quite fun.
Yeah, there's a lot still to go this season. Mathematically, everyone is still in it as far as I can tell. So
Come
that's
on, Bottas.
yeah, the points gap as it stands, the greatest points gap is obviously that to the likes of Stroll, Bottas, Perez with 179 points difference to Kimi Antonelli at the moment. But there are still, as far as I can work out, about 366 points still to available if you're good. So
Cadillac,
yeah,
here's your chance to do a blinder.
yeah. If Audi nail things from here on out, they get the reliability sorted. Nico Hulkenberg
Mm,
championship.
I'll be
Um,
up for that. I think
they've
I've
got
said that somewhere in a crazy preseason prediction thing that Hulkenberg would be up there, so I'm good with that.
yeah. If we've got nothing else to add to Mercedes, we'll get on to another interesting weekend for Ferrari, with Hamilton qualifying third and finishing third, Leclerc qualifying second and winning, and his first win since Austin 2024.
Yeah, and redemption for him at Silverstone, because obviously you remember he was leading for ages. I forget which year it was now, but then
One.
Lewis, of all people, yeah, was the one to get past in the closing stages, and there was talk of that, and then Kimi has this issue, and you just can hear Charles's sigh of relief going, "Thank God that's not happening to me twice." To just
Yeah.
be Charles Leclerc's luck for that to happen. Um, he did a really bang up job, and I think this going back to what we were saying about with Mercedes, they've got the stronger car, even with their vulnerabilities, but Ferrari just have the consistency that they don't need to. Admittedly, they did this weekend win every race. to be up for both fights, the constructors and the championship here. Hamilton has still scored points in every single Grand Prix and every single sprint so far this season. Leclerc has the weekend now. Like we were saying, Austria was a nice bounce back for him after a couple of duff rounds, and then he comes in and wins in quite dominant fashion, which no one was really expecting. You go back to the predictions we were making. I don't think Leclerc really featured much, and if he did, it was only on the third step of the podium. Um, so for him to not only win, but then to get Ferrari's 250th Grand Prix is a nice little stat for himself on top of that, as well as it being their first double podium as teammates together for Ferrari. They're just going from strength to strength at the moment, and it's got to worry Mercedes a little bit because they had the issues with Kimi before, they had the issue with George, then they have these kind of freak kind of incidents that they had with Kimi this weekend. And yeah, that could easily flip and you have some kind of freak thing with Ferrari at some point, but you can't bank on that. And so you've got to try and find a way to outmaneuver that just consistency that both of those drivers are showing, Hamilton in particular. And there's only so much you can do on that one.
Yeah, I think the car's baseline pace was a little closer this weekend to where it really needs to be, but it's a car that clearly enjoys its tyres a little too much still. Combining this weekend with Austria, it's obvious that tyre degradation is something it suffers with, especially in the heat. Saturday was a bit warmer than Sunday was, which is why I think we saw Lewis struggling in the sprint race just to keep that one set of tyres going. Whereas come the cooler Sunday, the Ferrari seemed a bit more manageable. And while I think Lewis could have gone longer on that first stint if he had pushed through some graining, it might have been wise just to sort of enjoy a bit more stability in that second stint on the hard tyres, regardless. Um, so
There was nothing massive to gain,
no,
from staying out longer. So
at,
it was a sensible
at that
decision.
point, yeah. And again, it's Ferrari making sensible decisions on the pit wall. This is something we've sort of
That's the
forgotten.
most worrying thing for
Yeah.
Mercedes. They're actually knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, Ferrari can strategy their way through a lot of Grand Prix here and work their way around a lot of problems. But yeah, Charles' pace was solid and his launch was incredible. Both he and Lewis knew how to launch that car off the line and both lunched Antonelli in that opening phase. It was phenomenal. Um, but yeah, it's for Charles. He got into the clean air, used it to drive away and control his race. There's nothing really to say about him. It was a solid drive and is a good win. For Lewis, it's
It's the
annoying.
driver we know that he is, and it's
Yeah,
just nice because you get races like the last couple, and it's very easy to then have a lot of people chatting shit basically. But then, you give him the opportunity and he does take it. He is still fierce. I mean, we go back to his 2024 season of just ridiculous consistency throughout his championship charge in 2020. He was the only one to be able to take it to Verstappen. And okay, he dropped off in the second part of the season, but he was still there in places like Japan towards the end of the year. And it's nice to see him with the tools available now to kind of really go after it again and show everyone and remind everyone why he signed a contract extension with Ferrari, why he's worth keeping, why they have so much belief in him.
mm. It's just heartening to see that. But with Lewis, while the jump start annoying and it did cripple his opening stint to sort of work back with that 5 second penalty, he did work it back well. He did sort of a very old school Lewis drive of just sort of head down, build the gap, undo all of that, and then go again. And yeah, he ran his race really, really well. It was just annoying that that Ferrari late pit stop dropped him a place that he shouldn't have really lost. I think they could have stuck with leaving him out, especially if they knew it was going to be safety car to the end.
Yeah,
But that's what ifs. He did well this weekend with both Ferraris outscoring Kimi. They close in on him, like you said. And the team, by and large, was with it all, and the car seemed more stable across a race once they all settled down. It lacks a bit of power though, which isn't usually something you say about Ferrari, but they do have engine development points in hand, so there is a threat still to come to Mercedes, and hopefully they can develop it a little bit more this season to keep the pressure on the Silver Arrows.
yeah. I think it's just that sheer consistency that's got to worry everyone else because they're just not really, when they've had incidents, it's been, Monaco with Leclerc, it's more of a driver track sort of thing. It's not the car that's gone wrong, it's the driver or the elements at the circuit. And I think that's, potentially leading some other people down rabbit holes that work perfectly fine for Ferrari because it means that they'll not keep underestimating them. and they'll get done over sooner or later by that.
Yeah, and equally, we've talked a lot sort of in the past few Grand Prix about Charles sort of getting to grips with possibly the new braking systems of Ferrari moving away from Brembo to carbon industry. And Silverstone has some huge braking zones when you consider the likes of coming
Mm.
off the Wellington Straight into Luffield Woodcut. And when you look at the way that you have to brake going into the Vale chicane, these are big braking zones where you're coming from very high speeds. Even going into Stowe, you're shedding off speed from nearly 200 miles an hour. He's got the confidence back in the front end of that car and back in the brakes to be able to place the car and control it and shed that speed and sort of place it with his left foot, really. And it's reassuring that his championship is going to hopefully sort of pick up its steam once again at one of the more challenging circuits when it comes to brakes. Spa is going to be another one of those coming off the Camel Straight at what I think will be about, well, if we do a super clipping, it's usually about 202 miles an hour going into Le Combe at the top there. But
Again, a circuit where both he and Lewis have great history in terms of on-track performance. So maybe there's more of this to
yeah,
come. Who knows?
and I mean, they set some great history this weekend as well.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
With
exactly. Like so, 250 wins. It's not bad going
no,
for a team.
pretty solid there. Meanwhile, at McLaren, Piastri qualifies eighth, finishes 11th. Norris qualifies sixth and finishes fourth. And I've forgotten to write notes for this one really because it's a
There's not
nowhere.
much to say.
Yeah, it's a nowhere weekend for Norris, really. Just solid going out there, driving the car around. And for Piastri, it would have been better had he not had to stop early on for a bit of unfortunate contact with, was it Behrman, I think he gets into the back of, or Lindblad, or one of
So
the Racing Bulls. And he just has to stop for a nose change really early on, and that just puts you down the order. Takes a while to overcome it. He does work his way back through, credit where it's due. He was a long way off the pace, but also it was funny counting down the laps until he came back past the Aston Martins and then seeing him come back past the Aston Martins a second time, you sort of go,
yeah,
"Oh, okay."
even when he's down, he's still not that bad.
There is a good bit of
Um,
Aussie grit to him, which is nice.
yeah, I think it's just Norris showed essentially what McLaren are this year, which is close on paper when you
Yeah,
look at the results, but never really being a threat. They'll be the people best placed usually to capitalize should something go wrong. You look at his podium in Spain, for example, but without that, they're not getting there on merit at the moment. It's going to be a Ferrari Mercedes show, barring any kind of crazy Grand Prix. And the only trouble they have then with the crazy Grand Prix is that they have these other two teams, three teams really, with Red Bull, Racing Bulls, and Alpine being there as well. And arguably, if you had to put all of them into a straight fight with each other, it's not clear cut that McLaren would come out on top there, which is concerning for them, but great for us because that's one of the good things about the new regulations is that we don't have the same team at the top, and you're really seeing what drivers can do with cars that are not perfect and how can they drive around those certain issues. That's how you determine the good drivers from the great.
yeah, it's going to be one of those ones where it's very interesting again, looking at how close things are when you look at sort of just it very plotted up, just positions graph wise, the battle between Piastri, Hamilton, Norris, and Leclerc. Obviously, Hamilton has now sort of streaked off into that top three, but what it's
Mm,
done is leave sort of Norris floundering around sort of in the middle with Leclerc and Piastri just weaving over the past few Grand Prix between one another, and it's tit for tat each weekend. And if Ferrari are now able to sort of regularly sort of streak away a little bit, if Leclerc has got that confidence, it's going to leave McLaren to start falling behind. And dare I say, into the clutches of Isaac Hadjar more so than possibly Verstappen, because one of them seems to be more at home with
yeah.
that car than the other. And they're
And
lining
again, leaves
up
McLaren at threat
well.
from the midfield teams of Alpine and Racing Bulls who are just consistently getting points at the moment. And, I think we said this after the last race, I'm not necessarily expecting them to beat them, but it might be a lot closer than we would have thought going into the year.
Yeah, was it 2020 that we saw Alpine versus McLaren for the, or was no, was it Racing Point versus sort of McLaren going into that point in the season? It was essentially that we had a year where it was a really good midfield battle, and I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to see that again this year. But it's going to be randomly Red Bull, McLaren, Alpine, and Racing Bulls, and it's going to be an absolute melee. It's going to be fantastic. I mean, with McLaren at the way, we've already mentioned them a little bit. Red Bull. Verstappen qualifies seventh and DNFs. Meanwhile, Isaac Hadjar qualifies fifth, finishes fifth.
I think it was a really great weekend from Hadjar, another great result. He's not been outside the top six since Canada, which, is pretty damn good. If there's more talk again after this weekend of what's Verstappen doing, and is he staying with the team to see out his contract, or is he just going to go somewhere else? If he does leave, Hadjar is doing everything he needs to show he's got what it takes to be a stable pair of hands at the top of that team. And if they put Lawson in next to him, which would make a lot of sense, then they've got a really sweet lineup for 27, especially given how they were teammates for the majority of last year, how well they work together. It makes a lot of sense, and you see how Nicolas Solo's performing at the moment. You look at him and go, you're at threat of performing in a season where you then can't graduate because there's no space anywhere. So if Max did go, it then leaves your B team, which is looking more and more like an A team at this point. Um, with a very strong lineup of Lindblad and Solov, that's two very interesting and different but equal but very capable drivers there. One of which being a rookie, the other being in his second year, but very much both in the mix. So both teams would be in quite stable hands there. But yeah, Verstappen, like we talked about earlier, he was all right. He looked like he was just there to kind of cause a bit of chaos for the most part. He wasn't really threatening the podium too much. He was close to it, and we probably could have had one, but I don't know if that would have if we had the issue if he would have stayed there or not. I think that's the thing. We just don't know at the moment. It's not because of him. It's clearly the car. But it's just interesting how even with Verstappen and the skill we know that he's got when he does have to deal with a challenging car, it's still not enough to go. He's running in a podium position, but we don't know if he's going to keep it either from the car doing what it did in this instance, or from one or two of the drivers behind just being able to creep up and get past.
Yeah, it's Verstappen's pace isn't the bit of question. The problem is it's that Red Bull's pace in the latter stages of a race. And like you said, if someone else can creep past him, it's a different matter. I think Hadjar a little bit mixed back and forth on the road, but he was able to recover it well, as I think is the important thing. Even if something goes wrong for him early in the race, we're now seeing him at a point where he's comfortable enough to gather himself back up, refocus, and press on. And I think that's just as important as being sort of outrightly fast. And he outdid Max in qualifying as well. I think this is the really interesting thing. If you look back at his qualifying data, all three times that counted to get him through from Q1 into Q2 and Q2 into Q3 and Q3 to fit his final grid position, he was faster than Max in all three of those as well. He's really at home in this chassis at the moment, and I think that's paying dividends for his confidence as the season moves on, as the championship develops. Max isn't happy. He's had gripes leading into the competitive season and struggled to unlock much of the pace through the car. And then it snapped on him twice, as once he caught it once, and then it just goes the other way, and he's got nothing left at that point to try and catch it, putting him in the kitty litter at the Norris stand of all places, out of the race. Um, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the car, and it's the chassis where Max wants it, but Isaac seems to have that chassis under control. And again, it really depends on
And we've not seen that too often where it's that way around. It's always
yeah,
been whoever isn't Max going, I need something to change his chassis, and the team going, no, because it'll make Max unhappy. And now we've got a case of, damn, what do we do? But also we've got management in charge now that we didn't have in all those previous times where we had that. So it might not be as clear cut in terms of why should we grow over one driver to benefit you when you're the more experienced, more capable, da 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 da.
yeah, he might be more experienced, more capable, but at the moment, or certainly off the back of this weekend, his younger teammate in his second year in the sport has the measure on him. There is a good bit of that car there, and clearly that's the bit that Isaac is able to communicate and retain within the chassis, and it's really interesting to see how that develops. It'll be interesting to see if some modifications can bring it back into Max's envelope, or if we sort of stay at this interesting tipping point. And it's all amplified by the ongoing rumours around Max heading to a different team. His contract wraps up at the end of the season if he wants it to. The performance clause means that he can sign that as late as October if he wants to. His race engineer is heading for McLaren in due course. So would he make that move there? McLaren's broader racing prospects also offer him some strong options when you consider their WEC contender, their IndyCar aspects. They do have a presence in GT classes that he enjoys as well. The question is the culture at McLaren ready for Verstappen? Would Mercedes back him in a similar way? Does the team matter? Is all he wants a competitive car and he'd go and drive for Haas if they gave him something quick?
Well, let's not be too unreasonable there. That's not going to happen. But All I say is that we know McLaren are more than capable of making bold and controversial decisions at the moment when it comes to driver lineups. So there's more space for Verstappen there in one of their outfits than there would be in somewhere else, you'd argue. But again, he's got the Mercedes links with the endurance racing. Maybe that's what he wants to do instead. If he wants to just take some time at doing Alonso, go away for a few years, and if we do get V8 back or whatever happens on that front, he decides, oh, I might come back then and have a look and see how I feel. But perfectly happy over an endurance racing for the foreseeable future. Again, we said this last year. He's got nothing to prove, and the fact that he got that close to a fifth title against a team in a car that was as dominant as it was and should have been more so was testament to the capable kind of hand driver he is. So if he left now, it wouldn't seem like he's leaving out of bitterness or just, oh, I'm not at the top anymore and I can't stand it. It's just, what do I have left to do? If I'm not enjoying it, why should I do what I've done? He said after he won the first title, that's all I ever wanted. Anything else after this is a bonus. So he's it's really up to Red Bull to find some way to keep him to stay because if they don't, it's still then another team has to convince him why he should stay in F1. Because what can they offer him that he doesn't already have in some way, especially in the levels of achievement? He says records don't really matter to him that much, so you're not going to be able to get to him that way. Is it just throwing an awful lot of money at him? But if so, then why would he still not just go somewhere else and go, yeah, you can just pay me a lot of money and I'll go endurance racing instead? It's and I'll just be your person for brand partnerships and all the rest of it. And I'll just rather do that side of thing than race in a category that I'm not enjoying.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Do you spend all that money to have, I won't call him a divisive character. He is very good when it comes to feedback and by all accounts very polite and affable with his team but a driver that demands that much, would it be worth spending that much on a
Mm.
driver who demands a lot that you can't guarantee you'll get all that out of him and he leaves again after a season? It's a big gamble to take signing a Max Verstappen. And Mercedes and McLaren are possibly the only two that could really make that step. Although given
Again,
how
who do you get rid of? Because you'd be thinking, what would be the point in getting rid of them? What can he give them with that machinery, especially given the time he'd need to get up to speed with it all to make it worth their while?
my only rogue counter is Alpine are doing really well at the moment. Flavio
I'd
Briatore
say
isn't.
I'd say go to Racing Bulls.
It's just moved to the next office building. I'd say
Yeah,
I'd say go to Alpine, but they're doing all right at the moment with a good bit of steerage. And bear in mind they've had a good brain drain from a lot of other solid teams at the moment. They've got a package that you could easily go and develop. He knows how to drive alongside Pierre Gasly. I think if he went along to Flavio Briatore, knocked on the door and said, "Right, sit down, shut up. Here's what I want. Get rid of Colapinto," Briatore would bend over backwards for him because Briatore likes that.
that'd take quite a bit of doing.
There's a lot of Briatore to bend over backwards. There's remarkably a lot less of Zach Brown to bend over backwards these days, but that's a completely different
Oh,
podcast.
please let me clip that and just put that on the socials. No context whatsoever.
But it's a positive thing. He's looking after himself, and we like to see that. But it's I I wouldn't be surprised if just we get this rogue moment. Also, where else do Alpine race? They have a wet unit. Where else do we see
True.
BWT as primary sponsors? GT series. There are these opportunities that Verstappen could exploit and go along to and manufacture his way into situations he wants to be in. If he only wants to go and do a couple of GT bits, he can sign on with Alpine as one of their sort of like showcase drivers, run as a BWT back driver in GT series, call it a day. But it also keeps him open to do other bits and pieces as he goes on. I'm just saying it would be interesting to
It's
see.
really just up to him to. He's the meme template at the moment. The guy just sitting at the, the desk on the university campus, going, "Come and convince me essentially of why I should stay. Change my mind.
Yeah,
Someone come over and do this because I don't need to. I don't need to be the one chasing after anyone. You will want me.
yeah.
Figure it out amongst yourselves."
Convince me to come to your team. He's very much the cork in the bottle for the driver market at the moment as well, because he could move places, free up people, push people
But
out.
again, if you just left, it wouldn't even do that much at the same time, though, because
Yeah.
if you're Red Bull, yeah, you could bring in someone from the outside, but you've got such a strong stable of drivers now coming through that you easily plug that hole with Lawson and Soloff, and then you're done. So it might not even change that much, but it's just interesting because again, it really depends on can someone convince him to move, or does he just leave?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, we've mentioned Alpine already. We'll touch on them. Gasly qualifies 12th, finishes 10th, and Colapinto qualifies 19th and finishes 9th. This is a really good result.
All in an effort to not fuck you over for once.
Yes, yeah, finally they listen to the predictions and actually do what I need them to do. Really good result from the team and potentially covering up a poor qualifying with solid Sunday pace.
Hmm.
Either way, Colapinto coming for a long way back to bag points. You've got to make those overtakes, and there are some half decent cars you've got to get past there. Certainly the Audis. Um, and well, Gasly worked well to recover his race too. A dark horse in this season's championship midfield, and one that looks to be keeping things honest here as well. If you start slipping, if you're McLaren, if you're Hadjar, if you're Lindblad Lawson, and you make a mistake, Gasly and Colapinto are eating you for breakfast.
I mean, before qualifying, he gets the advantage of being ahead of ultimately Kimi, Max, and Nico, and then the two Cadillacs, I think, who also qualified him. But that still doesn't take you the whole way up there. Arguably, you think, yeah, he should be able to get past both Hasses. But interestingly, he doesn't get past either the Racing Bulls or Bortoletto, who had a brilliant race. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Colin, but it's just interesting to go. It's like, okay, when he's getting past the cars that he needs to get past, but it's interesting to see which ones he wasn't able to from. And yeah, maybe it's because he started that far back, but then you look at Gasly and go, he started a lot further up, only gets to 10th. So it still shows the limitations of that car, but like you say, still a dark horse. But promising at the very least. And you are, like you say, if you are Verstappen, you're giving them a little bit of a look more than you definitely were this time last year.
Yeah, you're considering that if they've got this Mercedes power plant tamed, if they've got a team that you can slot yourself into, where there's an obvious seat, it's a really interesting thing. And yeah, I'm really enjoying watching Alpine this season, and yeah, there's something
That's a
quite
weird sentence for you to say.
yeah, considering what they've done the previous few seasons, where we've sort of gone, eh, and then a rogue double podium for them at Brazil, and then just gone back to going, eh, you what? And then they go, oh, we've remembered how to build a car again. You go out of nowhere in one of the most challenging technical regulations ever. You suddenly remember that you're supposed to be half decent at this. It's weird.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, also having a very good weekend, Racing Bulls. Lawson qualifies 10th and finishes 6th, and Lindblad qualifies 9th and finishes 7th.
Yeah, I mean, you think Alpine's doing well. Racing Bull is just on another level entirely at the moment. Fourth straight Grand Prix with double points for the team, with Lawson also getting a point in the sprint. It's just phenomenal. We said last week, they'd never gone three races back to back with double points. So they're just on a historic run at the moment. They finished just behind Hadjar, which is not bad going either. And, if you're describing Alpine as a dark horse, then what the hell are Racing Bulls? Because they really are kind of coming out of not quite as far back as Alpine were last year, but I don't think we expected them to be this good. Um, they're on this fantastic run, and they're only 1 point behind Alpine now, which I think it was at least a 13-point gap coming into the weekend. I think, if I'm remembering pre pre Silverstone correctly, it feels like a long time ago now. But for them to only be 1 point behind now, and then you've got Red Bull and McLaren as the next two up the road, if they can keep this consistency going, even if it's not, sixth and seventh, even if it's seventh and eighth or eighth and ninth, that's still really good for them. And that's just really, if you're loving Alpine, I'm there loving Racing Bulls this year because they are just showing what they need to show. And Lindblad, rookie, having a phenomenal first season. And I think Lawson, for a driver with the lengthy and complex time he's had in Formula One so far, for him to do this off the back of how his year started last year, it's so nice to see. And I'm just so glad he was able and is still able to get the chance to show what he's capable of and not be kind of tossed aside before he's gotten the proper opportunity to. We see that with so many other drivers, and I'm glad he's not one of them.
Yeah, coming out of Austria, Toro Rosso, Racing Bulls were on 44 points, Alpine were on 57. So what's that? That's a 13-point difference.
Yeah,
And coming out of Silverstone, there is now
just
just
one.
1 point separating them. They're having a really, really interesting season. And the fact of the matter is that they have now left Haas on 21 points. a long way behind, and everyone
Oh
else
yeah.
is just sort of like trundling along in their own sort of world. The mid-season battle we're going to see between Alpine and Racing Bulls and possibly McLaren when they all sort of all collide later on is just going to be fantastic. And the car is approachable. It's easy to extract performance from, allowing both of its drivers to get their feet under the table. The slightly more experienced head of Liam Lawson is leading the driver side of things sensibly, though, and clearly supporting and coaching Arvid nicely. Liam spoke recently about the support that Max showed him when he reached Formula One and the top team as well, and it's now reflecting downwards. And I think that's a really positive sign of the attitude shift at a team that's formerly been very tricky to find your place in, certainly the Red Bull broader family. We're now seeing both teams being a just generally better place to
It's
race
that soft
ride.
reset is going nicely for them, and
Yeah,
they're finding this new identity of you can be a junior driver here and succeed. We won't kill you immediately.
yeah. We will let you get in. We'll let you get your feet under the table. We'll sort of encourage you as things go. Meanwhile, at Haas, Behrman qualifies 14th, finishes 12th. Ocon qualifies 17th and finishes 13th. And their pace has vanished. And they all seem puzzled as to where it's gone. They can't figure out what they've done, what upgrade they've brought, what change they've made that's eradicated any pace they might have had. And they're now being left behind, as we said, by the midfield of RB and Alpine. It won't take long for Audi or Williams to overhaul them if those teams can tease out their problems sooner. Considering the stonking pace that Bortoleto showed in his Audi, if they can pinpoint what generates that speed and dial in a bit of reliability, Haas are going to have a big fight on their hands.
Yeah, once again, they just didn't look anywhere this weekend. Gutted for Berman to miss out on points at home. I mean, upside for him, silver linings. The only positive thing I would say is that he got to drive one of Senna's old cars prior to the weekend, which was very nice to see. Again, when we're having to go to that kind of length to find a positive for you, you know it's not going well.
Yeah, it's winning the Lego race levels of oh well, you had
Don't
something.
worry, I've got that. I've got that later. Don't worry.
Yeah, it was nice to see Bevan driving that Lotus though, the 97T, and just how much it meant to him as well. The fact that
Hmm.
it's he's one of those drivers who genuinely eats, sleeps, and breathes Formula One. To him, the history of the sport and his place in it are tantamount to his sort of everyday sort of work. And I want to see more of him as the seasons go by, and I think I'm certain we will.
We
And
will. It's just
really
it's a shame we
exciting way.
can't see a little bit of the. We don't need a perfect car from Haas. God knows they can't make one so far. But it would be nice to see just how they're able to do so well to start with in these new regulation sets, but how they then lose all of that performance before the summer break, and you go, how do you keep doing this? It's impressive, but I don't like it.
The fact that they lost all that pace as early as wow, let's see, where did they get their
So
points
probably
so
after
far?
Japan, probably you have that month break to Miami, and then it just started going downhill from there. It felt like.
Japan, Ocon scores a point. Behrman scores a point in Canada. Ocon two in Monaco, and then pointless since Barcelona now. So that's three races on the bounce where they failed to score points.
But it's not even high up in the top 10 when they do finish there. It's just the
It's
bottom
one
end of
or
it. So
two.
even the points that they're getting isn't enough to kind of keep pace with the likes of the teams ahead of them. So
Yeah,
it feels very much on brand with what they had going on their livery front for Japan. Of they've gotten Godzilla's atomic breath, but now they're having a really long time for it to recharge so they can use it again.
yeah,
You
and
go, I hope it's not the next time that you have that livery because that's Austin, and that's too long away for that to be worth.
also when you consider the run that RB are going on, the fact they've gone sort of back to back to back to back, almost double points finishes. Meanwhile,
Four
we're now
races in a row.
yeah
Yeah.
three races in a row for Haas scoring nothing,
Hmm.
and
How to do it in the opposite direction.
yeah,
Not good. We don't need that guide. We've got other teams for that.
it is frustrating. Speaking of frustrating, Williams Sainz qualifies 15th, finishes 17th. Albon qualifies 16th and DNFs. And it's a rogue penalty for Sainz, this one actually. He had a
I don't
lap.
think we've ever had it before, have we?
No, we've not spoken about it before, certainly. So it's not happened in sort of the significant time that we've been
I don't
punditing.
remember it ever happening in the time I've watched
No.
F1, so that's at least the best part of 3 decades.
Yeah. So he had a lap added to his race by the stewards for overtaking the safety car when he didn't need to. He was already a lap down in the race, but stopped under the safety car that Verstappen triggered because of the quirk of Silverstone pit lane, which is also the same reason that Schumacher once won a race through the pit lane. Sainz was
Well,
able
just
to.
to interrupt slightly for them, did you hear Norris's team radio about that?
No.
He was asking when the safety car was like, "Oh, can I pit and overtake?" And like, "No, that's not allowed." And like, no, always worth asking.
I love the fact that
Trying to see
Norris
if he
thought.
could get past the three cars ahead of him so he could win the British Grand Prix again.
That's genius. I love the fact that Norris thought of that from within the car, but the entirety of Williams didn't factor that in because when they brought Sainz in, obviously he had a fairly good stop and comes down the pit road. The pit road route is so much shorter than the fact that you don't take the Vale chicane, you don't take Club Corner, you don't take the Hamilton Straight, you don't take Abbey. It spits you out just after Abbey and straight into Farm. That Sainz comes out having overtaken the safety car and then sort of just sets off to catch up round to the back of the field. And they're like, no, you needed to drop back into where you were. Um,
And that's about
so
way of doing things that you have to go backwards to then be let to go forwards so that you can technically do it the right way. But it's again gives you an equally bizarre penalty for it.
yeah, so he sort of unlapped himself there, but they hadn't noticed he'd unlapped himself, so sort of caught up to the back of the field. And then when the message comes through that lapped cars can overtake the safety car, Williams just sort of drops the ball there and just assume that he's on the list, forgetting that he has now accidentally unlapped himself already because he's passed that line. He no longer counts as lapped traffic. So therefore, he sets off again to go round and unlap himself, therefore bringing himself into, I think, the lead lap almost. And then they go, whoa, hang on, wait a second.
Have
Um,
you done that?
hmm. Skeptic among the group might argue that this could be what hampered getting the safety car out of the way earlier, if they had to sort of go, well, hang on, we've got the wrong amount of cars coming past, and why is one
I
of them
think the
sort of,
fact that neither Williams nor the FIA picked up on something like that just shows that there are people in their roles that perhaps shouldn't be.
yeah,
Because that seems like quite a fundamental thing to be across. And again, makes me wonder what they're supposedly using this base in Switzerland for, because it's, well, they don't appear to be using it for nothing, as we've talked about previously. It's like, this is why you were meant to have people somewhere else to help out with everything in the same way that nothing should need to be investigated after a race because you should have people somewhere else that you can just divvy that off to that you can trust to come back with the decision and make sure that you're on top of everything. The fact that you can have such fundamental errors still at what is apparently the pinnacle of motorsport is just a bit funny in a sad, depressing kind of a way.
maybe I've watched too much James Bond, but a man who has no way of being deposed from his role leading an organization of faceless goons from Switzerland in some sort of global plot is very strange and not something I want to be particularly a part of nor criticize. However, up until this point, Williams had had a fairly mediocre race by that car's capabilities. The fact that Sainz also went backwards two places, possibly due to his lap penalty, possibly also just due to the fact that the car was going nowhere this weekend. And I think if anything, Albon was possibly sort of quite lucky that he was able to retire with damage sustained from an early collision with Behrman. I think they realised he wasn't going to score points. There's no point in wrecking the car further. In you come. Let's call it a night. Um, all in though, it's same as it ever was with Williams, whose incremental gains weekend on weekend apparently are very tricky to notice at the moment.
Yeah, summer break can't come soon enough. I think they need that break to reset and try again in the second half because at the moment I'm just not expecting anything much of them in Spa and Hungary. And I hope I'm wrong, but even as the eternal optimist that I am, I'm struggling slightly with them having a positive end to the first half of this season.
Yeah, it's.
You need something truly crazy to happen at one or both of those races for them to get anywhere near the points.
I think.
It's not happening on merit.
Yeah, I think both offer the opportunity for something truly crazy to happen, but
Hmm.
I don't even think that Williams car is it might end up finding its way into like a third place, but I don't think it's got, let's say, the Yevon David ability to sort of hold up traffic and stay where it is. I think it would just
Oh,
tumble straight.
Albon does. It's just whether or not the car can.
Yeah, the cars have got the drivers have got it in them, but I don't think the Williams car is capable of actually sort of running with enough pace to hold someone behind it.
We
And
need them driving side by side the entire time to keep the cars behind them that way and go, no, I swear this is as fast as we can go. There's nothing we can do about it. We just can't get past each other.
Top
It's
Gear
just
Cheap Alpha
literally,
Romeo
it's not
Challenger
there.
Nottingham. Yeah, the sort of
Exactly.
we block the track. No one else can get past us. Yeah, I just can't see it happening for Williams this season, which is painful. Meanwhile, someone I can see it happening for this season, Audi. Nico Hülkenberg qualifies 13th, but would unfortunately go on to DNF. Meanwhile, Gabriel Bortoleto will qualify 11th, and only two cars ahead of him actually suffer issues, finishes eighth. So he's making up places on
Yeah.
track. And importantly, he was well inside that points before the problems start happening ahead of him as well.
Hmm.
So the pace for the points is in that car, and he's really getting into this season and getting into the stride of things. He understands how the car works, how to get his pace out of it. It's good. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing from Bortoleto. And he came out
Yeah.
afterwards
His,
to the pit lane to see his fans, which was nice.
yeah, it's just Audi's best result so far again for the sport so far, which is just great to see. And like you say, he was in that position one way or the other to capitalize on the advantage. He was already there, but then he was able to get more out of it. Hulkenberg, you know you're not worried about him. It is, you look at all of the trouble he's been having recently. It's not anything he's done. It's just the car and the issues it's having. So when they get up to speed, they're going to be on it. I won't be surprised if we see them get past both Williams and Haas by the end of the year. Um, if Bortoleto can the qualifying clearly is there for both of them. That's enough. That's kind of where you'd expect them, considering the teams that are ahead of them. But then you need to have that a little bit more reliability, definitely on Hulkenberg's side at least. But then, you can take the fight to maybe the Alpines would be the easiest thing. It's Racing Bulls maybe, but they're proving to be just on a bit of another level at the moment. But maybe you can rely a little bit if you're them on something happening to a Mercedes or a Red Bull or a McLaren. And then you're already going like Bortoleto does here from sort of ninth or tenth to eighth. And if you have that for both drivers, you get a seventh and an eighth, then maybe, and that's going to do you a world of good, especially if Haas and Williams keep going on the streaks that they're going on. And you go, yeah, you might get 1 or 2 points here or there, but it's not enough to keep someone like Audi behind you. So I think they're having a much stronger year than it will appear so far. I think they're the other side of Cadillac in that respect. It's we've got these two as the new teams, right? And Cadillac's obviously measuring them with a different stick, but Audi's sort of the other version of them. And I think both are doing a lot better than the results alone suggest.
Mm. Exciting watching the Audi project, and it's a lot of people are sort of questioning sort of, oh, why are Audi buying out Sauber? Oh, it's a shame to see Sauber, a historic nameplate Formula One, going. But the fact that Audi are doing something genuinely so exciting with it and pushing it forwards, I think has very quickly allayed all those fears. And the fact that it's got two drivers who are
And
very
in a quiet way,
in a quiet way as well. They're not crying about it. And two drivers that are very engaged with the process and really helping drive it forward as
Hulkenberg
well.
was so happy for Bortoleto after the race. He's like, oh, it's a shame for me, but it's good for the team. It's good for him. It's moving in the right direction. I'm not too. Nothing about the way he's talking makes me think he's worried about himself or that it's going to be a long-term issue for him.
Mm. It's yeah, a useful position to be in for Audi, I think, as things change and move forwards. They've also got the simpler side of the engine and power unit series up to date as well. This was one of the first things they had running. As soon as they were confirmed, sort of in Formula One, it was sort of months later they had a test bed engine set up. So as we see the next seasons go and they shift more towards petrol power units, it's going to be really interesting watching that Audi project because they know what they're up to.
And they're only 5 points away from Williams, and Williams themselves are only 10 points off Haas. So it's really not too inconceivable to see that. I mean, obviously the jump up then to Racing Bulls is quite significant. So I don't necessarily see that, barring some kind of freak podium. But again, for a brand new team in a brand new regulation era, if you can finish above those two teams and kind of get seventh as sort of the best of the rest, that's not bad going. You've taken two very big scalps in Aston Martin and Williams, and then you get the added bonus of Williams and Haas and Cadillac a little bit as well. That's really good going.
Yeah. it's a really interesting time for Audi. Meanwhile, though, the flip side to that coin, as it has been for the entire season, is Aston Martin. Alonso qualifies 22nd and finishes 18th, while Stroll qualifies 21st and finishes 19th.
It's pretty much all I've got to say. It's just a big sigh again. Yeah, we mentioned earlier, at least Alonso won the Lego race. So, we find the positives where we can. It's a shame it's just not in and nothing that matters.
Yeah, Alonso at first didn't look like he was going to engage with that Lego race, but then quickly found himself sort of having a very good time.
He
I,
realised he stood more of a chance there than he's had all season and goes,
yeah,
sod it, I'm going to
let's
just make the most of this.
let's put it this way: in the Lego race, I also managed to get a photograph of Lance Stroll smiling, so that's
Jeez,
possibly a first for the season. I think the
that's
thing with the
cool.
Aston Martins is when you see them on track, I don't think this never comes across quite as it's supposed to on the TV screens, but when you see them on track, the difference between them and the rest of the cars is stark. Y- It,
Is it like the steam powered car that goes chugga 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 chugga?
it really is in the fact that you sort of see the first lap and they're all sort of bunched together, but very visually as the field comes by and you see the spread of the pack, how much longer it keeps taking for the Aston Martins to eventually come through, and they come through line
Jeez.
astern because it's just the two of them struggling,
Mhm.
and the gap to the guys ahead of them keeps getting bigger. But then you notice that the gaps behind the Aston Martin starts getting smaller again as the leader closes up to them, and you go, "Oh no, it's
Oh,
happening!" And we're barely at lap like
again.
15. Um, and they quickly fell off the pace of the field ahead. Silverstone, it's a big power hungry circuit, and the Aston Martin cannot compete in a drag race. The Honda power unit is not there by any means, and the car can't do it in the twisty bits. I've already said I sat at Village, so you've got the big sweepy bit as you come through farm, heavy braking zone, right hander of Village, left through the loop. And every time they came through that section and through the loop, they were on a different line. They were battling understeer. The next lap, they'd be oversteering. The car would wildly snap on them. You could hear that they were having to wait longer than everyone else to put the throttle down because the rear end just doesn't have traction. Like when you're there and you can see it and just spend, what, 55 laps picking apart the Aston Martin over just three corners at Silverstone, bear in mind.
No, not
Extrapolate
good.
that across the remaining, what, 12 major corners there are around Silverstone, or what, 10, I think it is. And you're sort of left going, what are we doing here? I'd also recommend if anyone hasn't seen it, go and watch some of Lance's onboards. Watch him trying to take corners like Cops and Abbey, because understeer is when you turn the wheel and the car doesn't turn with you. And that's troubling enough in a road car doing 30, 60 miles an hour. It's probably quite terrifying when you do it in a Formula One car going through Abbey at 170 miles an hour, where you just see Lance sort of turn the wheel and just keeps turning the wheel and turning the wheel, and the front end just never starts actually going right. And you're like,
Just pause it up. That would explain more of it. Then
yeah, my
you go,
brother
I
in
kind of
Christ,
hope that's the issue. Then
yeah, my brother in Christ, is the wheel actually connected to the front end of the car? It's absurd. And you're just left looking at them going, it must be
how?
embarrassing at this point to go out and do that weekend in and weekend out. And yeah, the TV cameras do not show it because they'll show you something else and they'll cut to the Aston Martins and you'll see what they're up to.
Yeah,
But they never hold a shot long enough where you see sort of,
well, time is money.
Antonelli,
We don't have enough time for that.
yeah, Antonelli, the two Ferraris, George Russell, Isaac Hadjar, Max Verstappen, the two Racing Bulls,
Dum,
Linus
dum,
Stern.
dum, dum, dum,
And
dum,
then you
dum,
get maybe the
dum.
Alpines, and then you get Gary Bortoleto, then you maybe get the Williams, then you get then you get Hulkenberg, then you get the two Cadillacs, and then there is a genuine pause, and then about 30 seconds later, the Aston Martins just sort of careen into view, barely in control, and you look at it going, have they just let someone else have a go in that car? Because it can't be that bad. Like, it looks like I'm driving it,
Yes.
and yet they're still ahead of Cadillac. However, Bottas qualifies 18th, finishes 16th, and Perez qualifies 20th, and finishes 14th of all places. So don't,
Again, they're ahead of Cadillac, but it's just because that freak 1 point. It is nowhere near because of anything else. They have no right being ahead of them, especially when these drivers are putting out these decent performances that they are. It is getting better, and it's both cars finished, which is better than we could say for Austria. And I haven't had the chance yet to really dive into the details of them, but it was the first proper race. Obviously, we've got to see these upgrades that they brought. They then never really got to utilize in Austria because the car just caught fire. Um, so positive at least because again, you go, okay, the qualifying still not brilliant, but the race pace is coming there slowly, and you've got to think that the chance of getting a point or two by the end of the season, I won't necessarily say the summer break, but by the end of the season, they should have 3 points finishes. I feel would be fair to go for, and not a bad achievement considering. Which again, if Aston Martin are on the trajectory that they're on, at least gets them ahead of them, which would be worthwhile and a successful season, I would say, for Cadillac at that point.
Yeah, I think for Cadillac as well, they could start to go down the route of being, I don't want to say they want to be circuit specialists in their opening season, but if they want to start banking some points and just sort of proving a few bits and pieces here and there, the
Mm.
likes of Spa would really open things up there, and the likes of Monza, where you can sort of strip away a bit of the aerodynamics that you're struggling with, go for a very neutral car, utilize some bits that you do know to generate the low speed downforce you need, and then fly. And again, it only takes a couple of things to go wrong at the likes of a Spa or a Monza. And if you're already sort of,
And if you're Cadillac and you're far enough back, you can then capitalize that because you're nowhere near the scene of the crime.
yeah, but also if you're Perez somehow finding six places in a car that realistically shouldn't, but those upgrades clearly
Hmm.
work, if you're Perez and you can now start sort of getting that car up to speed and getting to the places where you're sort of regularly sort of P12 and things start to go wrong ahead of you, you
You've
move
just
upwards.
capitalized then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we say it before, to be those people that luck into the points, you've got to be driving hard enough to get into those sort of touching distance point places to begin
Yeah.
with. And we're certainly seeing from Perez this season that we're seeing it every now and then with Bottas, but he just seems to be hit
I think
more
she's having
so
the reliability
with the
issues that,
reliability problems. Yeah,
yeah.
he's suffering very much the Hulkenberg problem to Perez's
Hmm.
Bortoleto. And again, when they get the reliability sorted, I think we'll see Bottas get up to that interesting point. And we'll finally get the interesting answer that 2021 left us wondering for ages. Who was the better B driver? Who was the better sibling driver to
Hmm.
champions? And I think that's going to be a really fun drive because I think I still rate both of them as drivers. Both of them are incredibly competent, technical, and well-minded drivers when it comes to circuit racing. We haven't seen them in equal machinery before, so it's going to be like a sort of
Yeah.
a B tier version of Hamilton Rosberg or Hamilton Alonso. I'm excited for it, and it will come with Cadillac. I have faith. Maybe I'll buy some Cadillac merch. I don't know. I seem to have a fairly mixed approach when it comes to sort of my. I'm not as bad
I
as
don't know if that's a help or a hindrance.
well, I'm not as bad as Ellie Mae, formerly of this parish, who every time she bought merch, it used to sort of tank that driver's ability or just general team. So
Maybe she's bought Antonelli merch without us knowing. That would explain a couple of things.
I'm gonna message her after the show anyway because she's currently somewhere in the middle of France watching classic racing, not Le Mans Classic. She's at Charade. But so the I'll check that she hasn't accidentally purchased a Kimi Antonelli cap or something along the line.
Make sure she doesn't buy anything Ferrari. We don't need that.
Yeah. See, could
Or
she
she's
buy?
gone heavy on the Aston Martin front, and that's the root of all the issues.
Yeah, she does have a Fernando Alonso cap. I bought her one year. So
That proves that you definitely shouldn't be in charge of any merch. Leave
yeah,
it for a bit.
yes. Well, no, not necessarily the fact that I don't know if it's the fact that she owns the merch or
I
the fact
didn't
that I
help.
bought it. I don't know where
Until
the
we find out one way or the other, don't do anything.
we'll see. Anyway, with the teams out of the way, we'll dive into some winners and spinners to start wrapping this whole shebang up. And Timo, your winner, please.
I think I'll be racing Bulls because they're just on a historic run at the moment. It's so nice to see both of them up there. And they're just getting higher and higher into that top 10. And I know they were helped by the two issues with Verstappen and Teddy, but just love that they're there and just kind of proving everyone wrong. And it's just, again, I'm a big Lawson fan, so I'm happy to see him getting this time at the top, as it were. And you think if this is what he can do with a racing bull, imagine what he could do if he got poached by one of the top teams at some point. I don't know how silly a season we'd have for that to happen, but he's really in the mix of that now going, yeah, imagine if you did stick him in a McLaren or a Mercedes, that would be really quite interesting.
Hmm. I will say I've predicted both Lawson and Lindblad to get podiums this sweet season.
I
You've
could easily see that.
you only predicted Lawson. I did, however, for some reason, predict Stroll to get a podium this season. I can't believe I predicted that. Clearly, I thought the Aston Martin was
I
going to
can.
be. Clearly, I thought the Aston Martin was going to be better than it actually was. A rogue one to put in, but there we go. Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's a good season for Racing Bulls. I agree with you on that one, but I wanted to go a different route. I wanted to go for my boy Charles Leclerc, just an
The only
imperious
other choice,
rivalry.
really.
Yeah, it's a straightforward one. It's an obvious one, but really good drive, and it's the sort of the rebuild of form that we really want to see from him. And clearly, he has an inordinate amount of screen time for his first radio message after winning the race to be some obscure reference to a video that did the rounds on Twitter nearly a year ago. Um, so
Did appreciate that. It was
yeah,
good fun. It's like, this is familiar. Why? And you go, geez, that's a bit of a.
it's a deep
That's,
pull. Yeah,
I had to deep dive into the archives for a moment there. It's an older one, so a bit of checks out.
yeah, it's it. Yeah, I love that from Leclerc. I love the fact that clearly he has nothing outside of Formula One other than just sitting on his phone. Meanwhile, spinners.
I've gone for MBS because what on earth are you doing in that Lego race? You're not the main character. You're not a driver. Go away. Stop with the medals. They're tacky and stupid. And stop putting yourself on the bloody posters for every single thing that the FIA sanctions. It is downright sad. And the comment section is hilarious. I'm surprised he keeps the comments open on his Instagram profile because he does not come out well, which is not too surprising, but I just think that you got the weird photos and videos of him pushing Kimmy in the go kart, just looking so out of place. Stefano as well doesn't get too many points for that for doing the same sort of thing this weekend, but MBS are just there are other ways of trying to make friends. You know, this isn't working. They're just tolerating you. You know, just stop. Stop being this little dictator. Go away.
Tolerating him is putting it lightly. I think also, was it one of the medals or like the challenge coin that they got for yes, yeah, it was. It was the sprint.
God, his face isn't on it, is it?
No, no, it was the I don't know if it was just a graphic that was shown or if it was the actual sprint trophy like plaque thing. They
Hmm.
misspelt Britain on it.
Oh, for God's sake.
They've spelt it Great Britain or Great.
See, less time making yourself the focus, more time spell checking, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's just the graphic for it. Include like a pic.
Again, ridiculous. Shouldn't happen.
I'll try and include like a picture for it because this shows up on it showed up on like the Fox broadcast, which is just the international feed. And it's sort of like the graphic behind a DJ ahead of the sprint race. And it shows a really nice stylized sort of bit of Silverstone with the Union flag in the middle of it and the outline of the wing in the center of that. And then F1 Sprint, Great Britain 2026. And you're like, oh my God, what are we doing here? But yeah, it was embarrassing watching him plow into the gravel along with all the drivers in the Lego go-kart race.
Just all the comments were just, bro thinks he's one of them. He thinks he's him. It's like, what are you doing here? It's like everyone is like, it's so rare to get the entire fandom for F1 united, and yet you know when it happens, it's either something for really good or for something really bad. And in this
Terrible.
instance, it's something bad because
It's
it's
either
just
Lewis
laughably sad.
it's either Lewis Hamilton first win at Ferrari, it's either Nico Hulkenberg first podium, or it's MBS
Mm.
doing something stupid. And in this instance, it was him doing the Steve Buscemi meme of "How do you do, fellow kids?" But it's "How do you do, fellow F1 drivers?" And he didn't even have a Lego kart. He was in one of the regular
No,
FIA
it was
ones.
just, yeah. Oh, it's just sad, you know. Oh no,
It's
go
embarrassing.
away.
It's embarrassing, Unc. For me, though, the FIA and the stewards were a bit of the cop out here. The weird Carlos Sainz podium, the fact that no one flagged it, the fact that we had that goof with the safety car. If I had a nickel for every time I've been to a Grand Prix weekend and there's been some sort of strange result to the Grand Prix or it's finished on the safety car, I'd have four nickels. Abu Dhabi 21,
Hmm.
Monza
Again,
22.
maybe you're the problem.
Yeah, Monza 22, we finish under safety car after Danny Rick
Hmm.
retires his McLaren last minute. Hungary 24, where we retire, no, where Oscar is gifted his win by Lando.
Yeah,
And then
and
this one.
then yeah, stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah. I ought to stop going to Grand Prix. It's going to be really tricky if I
It's for the
become
good of the sport.
a commentator or a genuine paddock journalist. We're going to have a very
Well,
strange.
stop that. No, don't.
Yeah,
This is your sign. This is clearly not for you. Go do some other sport. Go golf.
I don't like golfing.
Well, you can learn. You'll still see some F1 people.
True, true. They all seem to do a lot of that. Anyway, predictions review, and it's a thrilling 1 point each this weekend. No
More
points
points
for
than we
pole.
usually get.
Yeah, more points than we usually get. No points for pole. I got the podium correct, but in the wrong order, which I feel
So you didn't.
we ought to start awarding points for that. I feel if you're able to correctly
No,
predict
no,
the three
no.
people,
Get
it's
it right. You
no,
won't learn otherwise.
we're not in the generation of Hambot Ver where you can just pick the same three people and know that it's going to be them.
Well, exactly. So it's more interesting. So get it right. It's more satisfying when it happens.
You get a point for fastest lap, and I finally get one for Colapinto outscoring Pierre Gasly. Thank you very much,
Does
Alpine.
mean we're still equal on points, though.
Yes, it does. It means we've moved on identically, just sort of sort of notch up on the big spreadsheet. And when it comes to fancy Formula One, where are the teams? Where is the league even? I just had it open. Here we go.
I need to start looking at my team more often because I'm hemorrhaging positions and points at the moment.
Yeah, you are. So for the British Grand Prix, the highest scoring team this weekend was Jaffa Cake Racing. It's one of mine, 390 points.
I feel
Second
like you
place.
bribed someone at the fantasy F1 team. You kind of just you've got some kind of insider thing there. You're
I
not
mean,
usually this good.
I didn't pick particularly well going into this one because I used the unlimited sort of voucher.
Hmm.
So I went for Russell
Maybe you're just
Antonelli.
using all your good stuff early, and you're going to really drop off in the second half because you won't be able to do all of this.
Yeah, but it's still the same points early on or later. It's just a question of whether or not I've predicted it well enough. And the fact is that I had Antonelli and Piastri in there, where I really should have had. Well, who else would I have gone for? Like Hadjar
Well,
and
Russell,
Norris. I had
Russell and
Russell.
Norris would have worked better.
Well, I had Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Hamilton, and Piastri, as well as Ferrari and Mercedes. So I need to check back and see who would have been better. Second place this weekend, however, was Malteser Racing, another one of mine, 284 points. Third place, Lara Langer, Lara Racing, 283 points with a very good lineup there as well. Then my podcast team, 279 points in sixth. Where's the next one from Timo? A lot of
So,
scrolling.
well, first one of mine would have been good. Never mind the next one. It's going to be.
Here we
I
go.
don't know what happened here.
The first one from Timo, 21st place on the
Oof.
curbs, 210 points. Lewis, Kimi, Albon, Hadjar, Gasly with Haas and RB as your constructors. Oh,
Haas and Albon letting me down there because the rest of it not bad, but it's just Albon and Haas really doing
Kimi
the
losing,
bad lifting. Well,
Kimi
yeah, but
losing.
normally Kimmy would be all right, so I
Normally,
wouldn't
yeah, but
necessarily criticize.
he cost you a lot of places there. In fact, I can tell you how many
Mm,
places he cost you. We'll do the breakdown. Let's see. 23 points there, which not terrible, but yeah, 14 race positions lost him 14 points. It could have been a lot better there for him. Anyway, and at the bottom of the league this weekend was, hopefully, if we've done this correctly, the worst of all
mm,
possible options.
excellent.
Still
How many
scoring
points?
56 positive points though.
Damn.
Yeah, I know. Let me try and get the breakdown of it. Overall British Grand Prix, bottom of the list, worst of all possible options. How has he done that then? Um, no, it's not showing up for me properly. Hang on, let me adjust my screen so I can see what we're doing here. We'll come back to it. But anyway, we did weirdly all right, but the problem we ran into was the fact that some of the drivers there still score points because if they qualify quite well. Meanwhile, overall, Dashwall team, Niklas Tardos Ursat, 2,092 points, still leads. Sabonis Racing, run by Sebastian Fritz, remains in second, and it's another non-mover at number three, Ciarra Martin on melancholy grid, 1,809 points. I move up into fifth place ahead of Gunners Racing, Sebastian Fritz, with 1,776 points overall for Jaffa Cake Racing. Weirdly enough, Malteser Racing having a very strong weekend. However, they're overtaken by my podcast team. So that's a 10th and 11th place swap for them. And then to find the next Timo team on the overall ranking. It's on the curbs, down to 18th overall, 1,377 points. And at the bottom of the grid, the worst of all possible options, 321 points now. Still running Stroll, Alonso, Hulkenberg, Perez, Bottas, and Aston Martin and Cadillac.
To think about that, I'm gonna have to just remember to look at the team and actually change something before Spa because I think that's where I'm letting the side down. I just keep forgetting to actually do anything with the teams.
Yeah, you need to start remembering that one, buddy. Anyway, with that out of the way, this has been a fairly hefty edition of the Undercut podcast. We will be back soon to preview the next round, the next Grand Prix in Spa, as we head to Belgium for the final one of its weekends before it goes on rotation with Barcelona. Until then, if people want more from you, Thiemo, where can you be found?
On the curbs for everything interview wise, on the curbs IndyCar, where we will have a probably mammoth episode there as well after both the race in Mid Ohio and just the general news coming out of the paddock there, all of which is huge at the moment. And paddock influence and its race week for everything else that's good and sport, Formula One, IndyCar, and women in motorsport related.
Lovely stuff. And if you want more from me, you can pick up the latest issue of Classic Car Weekly. Goes on sale tomorrow, or possibly today by the time I've edited and released this on Wednesday in the UK. It's a bumper issue, our July bumper issue, looking at the future of classic motoring and the next generation of fans coming into the world. There's also the Classic Car Weekly podcast, which we'll be recording tomorrow as well. And you can find me on the internet as at Jesse on Cars on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. There's photos out already from the British Grand Prix. And if you want to actually find me in person, you can do that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I will be there chasing drivers and cars around, taking photographs, doing interviews here, there, and indeed everywhere. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again in about a week's time for a preview of the Spa Grand Prix.